Our habitats are turning into concrete jungles, and that is concerning, but there is hope even in this grim reality. Hello and welcome, I am Sadhika Tiwari and you're watching Eco India. If you look around your city to see shrinking tree cover, polluted rivers and nature struggling to survive and wonder, what can I do? Then this episode is your hopeful guide to reclaiming nature in urban spaces. Let's start here. What does this look like to you? Probably a drain filled with trash and effluents. This used to be once a river revered and worshipped as a god. In India, many such rivers and their tributaries have either dried up over the years because of human-induced climate change or turned into drains because of the pollution that we generate. But not all hope is lost. Let's head to Maharashtra, where a small company has managed to reclaim and restore a river and the ecosystem around it.
This is the story of a minor miracle. The story of how a rubbish-strewn, dying river was given a new lease of life by dedicated teamwork. The Kham River is just 65 kilometers long, with 11 of them running through Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar, formerly known as Aurangabad. It connects Mumbai with the center of India and is among the fastest growing industrial cities in the west of the country. That development has also turned a once clean river into a sewer that, instead of nourishing life, now destroys it.
Human residence was day by day, daily by daily, was increasing. There is no drainage system, and the river is the lowest part of that area. So whatever they used to throw there, and from then the river became a nala. It doesn't stay as a river.
Most local residents like Rama Abade were unaware that the sewage flowing next to their settlements was once a natural river and would continue dumping their garbage into it.
पहले नदी तो जैसा पुल भी नहीं था.
This side of the river was always filthy. Before the bridge was built over it, a lot of people from this side of the settlements would come here and openly defecate here.
इधर आती थी क्योंकि जब परिस्थिति वैसी.
Apart from domestic waste, large amounts of industrial waste were also being disposed of in the river. Varrock Engineering, a local company, wanted to change that. In 2017, it began to clean up the river as part of its corporate social responsibility.
Initially, we have taken a pilot project of 1.5 kilometers from both the side of this bridge. Initial work was only cleaning of all the dumped garbage. We have removed almost more than 1,000 trucks of garbage from this place.
In 2019, the company embarked on a partnership with EcoSattva, a local non-profit with a focus on green cover management, water body restoration and solid waste disposal. EcoSattva started with a baseline study of the 11.5 kilometer stretch of the river that flows through the city using drone cameras.
So the three key problems that we noticed during that study was, first was the pollution, the solid waste and the liquid waste that was coming into the river. The second was the lack of connect between the river and people. And then the last thing was also the lack of spaces for that connect to happen.
EcoSattva identified riverfront spaces that were not yet affected. Because they could be restored quickly, the NGO decided to start its work here.
We'll show a transformation that should be a hook for more people to get interested, for the corporation to get interested, for other government bodies to get interested, to then help us do more.
The riverfront has since been transformed into an eco-park with an amphitheatre and a play zone for the urban community living next to the river. Another important measure was to clear the river of sewage. As the NGO found out, there were about 250 inlet points from where the city's waste was flowing directly into the river. The work involved repairing pipes and building missing connections to the underground sewage system. The next step was a decision by the municipal authorities to set up a new system of treatment plants along the river.
Rather than having a centralized plant of sewerage downstream, we have to have a decentralized sewerage treatment plants upstream. one sewage treatment plant will be functional in 7 days, that is almost 2 crore liters per day. So that 2 crore liters, once it comes on the river, then the river will be clean.
आपले छत्रपती संभाजीनगर स्वच्छ व सुंदर ठेवण्यासाठी आपल्या महानगरपालिकेला सहकार्य करा.
Segregating waste and boosting awareness are key factors when it comes to keeping the river clean. A team of around 280 sanitation workers in Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar do door-to-door collections on a daily basis.
When we see people walking to the river with their garbage, we tell them to stop and take the trash from them.
80% of cities' garbage is now segregated, and those who continue to throw waste into the Kham River face fines up to 5,000 rupees or 50 euros. Outside the city, the tidying up work also includes the removal of invasive plants, while around a dozen native species have now returned, as have the animals.
See, we observe the jackals are coming back here. They feel this is a safe area for them. Birds starting roosting here again, which I told you, kites, then house crow, green pigeon.
The 5-year Kham River Revival project has a cost of around 15 crore rupees or 1.5 million euros. EcoSatwa aims to adapt the model nationwide for conserving urban rivers and their ecosystems.
What we're saying is that our rivers are like lifelines. They are spaces for humans, for biodiversity. And yes, we have neglected them so far, but really that's an opportunity for us to restore them to their natural conditions rather than reclaiming the land and using it for further markets or buildings or structures.
While a lot of progress has already been made, there's still plenty of work to do, such as comprehensive water quality monitoring, although the crucial part is increasing awareness of the role and responsibility of people for the state of the river and the flora and fauna next to it.
In Delhi, these stretches of green that you can see were all turned brown in the scorching heat last summer, and many cities are facing these same challenges. Their green cover cannot withstand high temperatures that are getting even worse due to the constant burning of fossil fuels. Berlin, the capital city of Germany, is one of the greenest in all of Europe, but the temperatures of up to 40 degrees are threatening these green oases even here.
This enchanting little garden is in fact an outdoor research laboratory set up at the request of the Berlin authorities. The people who created it have been tasked with finding out which kinds of shrubs, grass plants and herbs are more sensitive to heat and water scarcity, and which ones insects particularly thrive on. Watering is kept to an absolute minimum.
We now have species that can adapt by conserving the water they have instead of letting it evaporate.
The team keep track of how the plants develop, which ones fare all right without any rain. Plants are coming under growing pressure in urban areas like Berlin.
We're likely to see more extreme events, a difference in rainfall distribution, more dry periods, and more heavy rainfall events. We'll see more heat in the cities, and late frost is an issue too. The new plants we add need to be able to withstand practically anything, while at the same time being easy to care for.
The test garden boasts 145 different plant varieties from Europe and North America that feel at home in Germany and are attractive for insects here. The team assess how the plants respond to the respective conditions. The soil is topped with a layer of gravel sand, limestone grit or bark mulch to test which material retains water best. Berlin is billed as one of the greenest cities in Europe, with around 30% of its area covered by parks and forests, as well as rivers, lakes and farmland. But for all that nature, it's also a city full of roads and traffic and housing and office blocks. So even smaller areas of green have a better microclimate, with cleaner air and cooler temperatures in the summer. And this is one such oasis. 8 years ago, residents began prettying up the square surrounding the church with a range of shrubs, rose bushes and other flowering plants.
There are lots of people who'd love to do some gardening, but they live somewhere without a garden. And they're welcome to join us.
The grassroots organisation behind the idea has already revamped a number of squares in Berlin. It's funded exclusively through donations, with most of the money needed for watering. The plants now growing here struggle with excessive dry periods, which was not a problem when the flower beds were planted over a decade ago. But that's no longer the case.
Last summer was wet, but the previous ones were really dry. And a lot of the trees really suffered. So keeping the plants alive was a big challenge.
An entire bed in this little patch of greenery has now been redesigned with plants from the test garden. The idea is for Berlin to have more drought-resistant plants that need less care. For the researchers, real conditions in the city deliver insights into how the plants develop and how the beds can be properly maintained by residents.
We have vandalism here, plus dogs and other city animals walking all over the beds. Factors we have to incorporate.
In this case, nature has been left to its own devices, a former railway station that's now become a wonderfully wild park. The last train here departed in 1952. Since then, the tracks and vacant buildings have become overgrown and repurposed by nature, creating a new home for a range of rare plants and animals. Most of the area is now a protected nature reserve, with paths running alongside the old rails.
Nature starts off small with the first mosses and lichens, and with grass plants with delicate little blossoms, and then the bigger plants that have time to grow here appear. We already have real forest areas. It's always exciting.
The entire grounds used to be a huge shunting yard, which looked like this 70 years ago. They've since been reclaimed by nature within just a few decades. There's no shortage of relics from the area's previous life. And when you're there outside of official tour times, you can go on your own journey of discovery and probably not encounter a single soul.
The wild roses and the locust trees are in bloom. The kestrel young crying out when they're learning to fly, and squirrels gathering their nuts. It's just great to experience nature in the middle of the city.
Sometimes it's best to just let nature do its own thing, although sometimes a helping hand can be useful for adapting to changing conditions.
Scientists tell us in the most severe climate change scenario and without adaptation, we could lose up to a quarter of our global crop yield. Many native varieties of crops got phased out over the years because they weren't the most commercially and financially viable, but they did have a lot of benefits, and being climate resilient was one of them. Let's meet a man who has held on to the age-old tradition of preserving native seeds that the whole world is now catching up to.
Can you name these vegetables? All harvested from my field. Pumpkin, bottle gourd, ridge gourd, sunflower, corn, cucumber. We have 300 varieties of vegetables and tubers. Sundar is a farmer from near Uthangarai in Krishnagiri district who works only with seeds native to Tamil Nadu. You probably couldn't name every vegetable you saw because of how rare they have become. Research shows that there used to be 10,000 varieties of country tomatoes, but now only 2 varieties are usually seen in the market. Tamil Nadu also used to have 4,000 varieties of brinjal and 200,000 varieties of traditional rice. Sundar's field is one of the few places you still see some of those. I have traveled throughout Tamil Nadu, gathering knowledge about different varieties of traditional foods. So far, I have identified and documented over 1,000 varieties of seeds. Last year, we had 80 varieties of tomatoes, but this year, we have 100 of them. Apart from this, we have 60 varieties of bottle gourd and 30 different pumpkins. Diverse native seeds have been elbowed out by those that grow faster, more efficiently, and bring more profit. But Sundar is convinced that these seeds are about more than profit. They taste different and might have additional nutritional value. Native seeds are also normally more resilient to climate extremes like droughts since they have evolved in this climate. Last year's records show that out of 6 million farmers in Tamil Nadu, almost 150,000 were affected by drought. And Sundar believes that one key to solving the problem is more focus on native seeds and farmers staying in charge of them. Farmers should decide how and what to farm. But if they don't have control over the seeds, they need to listen to the person who does. Kulasekarapattinam brinjal is very famous. They are capable of growing in the hottest climatic conditions. But nowadays, they have disappeared from markets. There is a place in between Pondicherry and Kadalo where we can see another type of brinjal that grows in salt water, as it's very close to the sea. They can grow in water so salty that you cannot directly put it in your mouth. But in the last 10 years, that kind of brinjal has perished, as they have started using fresh water from bore wells, which doesn't work with that variety of brinjal. So, it's gone. What has replaced the native seed is the hybrid seed, which is one produced by cross-pollinating two plants. These are cheaper and easier to get, but often require pesticides and fertilizers, as Sundar's neighbor tells him. How much do you earn from this crop? Probably around 2,800 rupees or 30 euros per sack. What do you earn net? Nothing really. Only grass or straw remains. So no profit for you. Yes, because during the days of my father and grandfather, they had their own seed and we were farming on our own. But that's changed. Now, we get seeds from elsewhere. Sundar has started a native seed sharing group to invest in the long-term survival of the seeds and the soil they grow in. This ensures the democratization of these seeds. The group also works like a storage bank that collects seeds and creates awareness about traditional varieties. We have always been farmers in my family. We used to do chemical farming with hybrid seed varieties, but now we have switched to organic farming with natural seeds. I met Sundar on Facebook. He helped us come up with new ideas on exchanging seeds and how we can use them in our farming. Yuvraj says he's noticed a change in how people react to produce that comes from his farm after the switch. These native vegetables grow well in our field without much effort and expenses. Also because we don't hurt our land with chemical fertilizers. People love to get them, and there is very high demand for our product. Initiatives like this that bring farmers together and give priority to their needs and the demands of the environment are a key part of dealing with the future of food security.
Individual and collective community action is critical and paramount to reclaiming nature, but often it goes way beyond that. Forests, rivers, mountains and oceans, these often transcend national boundaries, and therefore they are also called global commons and require collective action. Heading back to Europe, let's see how the cooperation of countries has become critical to preserving the Rhine River.
Today, some 500,000 people live in the Alpine Rhine Valley. The Rhine marks the border between Austria and Switzerland. It separates the two countries, but it also forces them to work together. A 150 years ago, it looked very different here. The river meandered through the valley, forming extensive marshlands. Locals tried to fortify the banks of the Rhine with trees and raised banks, but protecting one side meant all the more flooding on the other side. Devastating floods occurred on a regular basis. Neither side was able to manage the river by itself. In 1892, Austria and Switzerland finally signed a treaty on flood protection. The two countries established a joint authority, the International Rhine Regulation, to represent the respective interests of both countries. Culturally, we are different, even if the river is all that separates us. But overall, I'd say we've helped each other to grow. Around 1900, the two countries began joint construction work on the upper reaches of the Rhine. The costs were shared. Initially, the work was done entirely manually. By the 1950s, heavy machinery was being used. The riverbed was deepened and narrowed, and the embankments on both sides were raised. For the next few decades, there was no more flooding. But these days, heavy rainfall is becoming more common, causing water levels to rise in the Alpine Rhine Valley. The Rhine is bursting its banks more frequently, flooding the residential areas that have been built close to the embankments. None of this comes as a surprise, but there's still no solution. Engineers have been working on the problem since 2005. Residential and commercial areas will remain unchanged, but major changes are planned for the surroundings. The key challenge is gaining local community support. People need to understand what's happening, or there'll be misunderstandings. Questions will be asked. A public survey on the development plans was recently conducted in both countries. Not for the first time in Switzerland, but a first in Austria. Even if there wasn't as much feedback as we actually expected, it was still useful input, especially from Austria. So in the end, something like that furthers understanding, and also, we believe, ultimately speeds up the planning approval. So what exactly do the plans look like? It's actually quite simple. The Rhine will be given more space. At some points, marked here in red, the embankments will be removed completely. This will make the river wide enough to allow islands to form in the middle, which play a key role in flood protection and also biodiversity. The plans are on a public display in an exhibition on the Austrian side of the Rhine. Citizens' concerns are also addressed here. We currently have a width of 60-70 metres. In future, the river will be 300 to 380 metres wide. If you look at the upper section on the map, for example, you can see very clearly that where there are built-up areas, we haven't moved the embankments. Where there are forest areas or agricultural land, we've taken the opportunity just to move them a little further outwards. So there will be less agricultural land, but farmers will be given land elsewhere, in Austria. On the Swiss side, there's no available land to distribute. This embankment will be removed and the river will be widened to cover the grassland up to the wider flood embankments on both the Swiss and Austrian sides. All the green areas behind us will then be river and can no longer be used for agriculture, for cattle fodder production. That's why some farmers on the Swiss side reject the plans. But for some on the Austrian side, they don't go far enough. In 30 years, we've never had a project on this scale. It's actually a good project that will bring about a major improvement. But if you're going to spend so much money and create such a huge construction site, then you should also keep nature in mind and make sure there's enough room in the river for islands and riverbank forests. That would be really great. This is an extremely monotonous, uniform channel. In its natural state, it would be much more varied and forested. And this is what the Rhine could look like one day, once the planning has been completed, the conflicts of interest resolved and the permits granted. But there's a lot to sort out, on both sides of the river, so that both countries are happy. Sometimes I can't sleep at night because the project is so complex. The Austrian government has approved construction for 2027, but Swiss approval is still needed. In 20 years, the Rhine could resemble its state from 150 years ago, with new islands that will also be great for the birds.
Nature prevails, come what may. But with a little support, it thrives and helps us thrive. What in today's episode inspired you the most? Do let me know. You can email us or talk to me directly on my social media handles. I will see you next week. Until then, take care. Goodbye. Namaskar.